Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. So today, in the continuing theme of a new year, Hijrah year, in which we rethink our lives, we have a new start, we renew and rethink what we're doing in terms of our life. In that spirit, I would like to speak to you about a book by a woman. She's a Palestinian Egyptian American. Her name is Yasmin Mogahed, or Mugahed, as Egyptians would say. It's called Reclaim Your Heart, Breaking Free from Life's Shackles. So along the same theme as from the Quran, Jalil Master talked about, and other speakers, including Professor Shafiq. It really speaks about what prevents a person from achieving their goals, both spiritually and in this world. And the author, so the book is called Reclaim Your Heart, Personal Insight into Breaking Free from Life Shackles. The author is Yasmin Mogahed. Yasmin Mogahed is a well-known speaker in Islamic conferences and other conferences, particularly in the Muslim community in North America, both in Canada and the United States. She has degrees in psychology and journalism from University of Wisconsin at Madison. She worked for a time teaching Islamic studies and writing at a university in California, but right now she works as a freelance writer, and she's in demand in terms of her speaking. And some of you might have run into her on YouTube. She has many speeches, and she has a show now called Serenity on radio in the US. So basically, most of her speeches and writing is about how to go back to spirituality. And this is very, very current for North American, especially North American youth, where many of the problem that Professor Shafiq or Mr. Shafiq just spoke to about, where there is addiction, where there's depression. They say that most teens or youth in Canada and the United States, majority of them, at one time in their lives would come to face one of those problems that Professor Shafiq was talking about. So really, this book is an attempt to lead people who are facing those things into a different path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards the Creator. The book it's a self-help guide that focuses on spirituality. You'll see a lot, if you go to the bookstore, you'll see a lot of books that talks about, how to write properly, how to speak properly, how to attain success, such as the Stephen Covey one. One of the person who read this book and reviewed it called it, "This is Ibn Ata'Allah meeting Dr. Phil." Dr. Phil is a very famous psychiatrist or psychologist, I'm not sure exactly at this point, but who's on US television doing self-help things. And the writer, Mogahed, actually writes from a place of vulnerability in which she had very difficult circumstances in her life. And she speaks honestly about what she has gone through and her journey towards breaking away from both spiritual and psychological pain. And it really relates to, as I said, youth, particularly in North America, but I see that having gone through the book, that it can relate to anybody, in any place. And the book is divided into 6 sections. It talks about attachments, and I'll get back to what she means by attachment: love, hardship, relationship with the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, women's status, and ummah, and poetry. Poetry, the last chapter sort of looks out of place in the book, in the sense that she's talking about all of these very difficult things in life, and then she ends with the poetry. But the poetries that she has at the last chapter, it really address these themes pain and recovery, reclaiming the heart. So the main insights in the book is really, you can summarize in 5 or 6 points. Self-realization or actualization, or one success, whether it's in dunya or in the akhirah, right? Whether it's in deen or in dunya, really has to do with, is prevented, right? The obstacles are because you have attachments. By attachment, she means, and she distinguishes between attachment and what love is. So she says, try not to confuse attachment with love. Attachment is about fear and dependency, and it has to do with more of love of yourself than love of others or other things. So for her, attachment is a relationship, whether it's to a person or a thing or an idea, in which you actually need that thing, otherwise you don't feel full, right? You don't feel that you have, and she says, in fact, love is not that. Love is that you are able to give more than what you're taking. So different types of attachment she goes through. Again, it looks like the list from Professor Shafiq there. She talks about dependency in terms of people, things, or ideas, and especially in terms of things where you have attachments to drugs or alcohol or food, persons, whether it's a marriage or relationship with your kids or your friends or your extended family. All of those could be unhealthy. So those attachments could be unhealthy, in which she calls it an attachment. Where that relationship is positive, she calls it love. Now, how do you get? So her basic question here, or goal in the book, is really to get you to a place, and sort of, I think, going back to, again, Shafiq's talk in the sense that how do you get out of these psychological or psychiatric problem or psychological problem in terms of these attachments? Because you can then, if you have these kinds of attachments, this can then lead to depression or addiction, not so much perhaps OCD and things like that. Her basic formula is that loving dunya, whether it's to a person, that could be a person or an idea or a thing, right? Is a mistake because it's a temporary thing, while loving God or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fulfilling, as God is the Almighty who created the world and is infinite. So basically it's, and obviously she puts it much more gently and much more, she addresses as nuances as how this could be done, and different strategies that you can use in terms of self-talk, for example, as Dr. Shafiq was saying, or counseling and things like that as well. And I would like to actually end with an ayah from Surah 48, verse 30. It really captures what this book is really about. So whatever affliction befalls you, it is account of what your hands have brought. And yet he pardons most of your faults. So this is really captures what this book is about, in that whatever difficulty, whether it's in this world or in the next world that you're going to, whether it's financial, whether it's psychological, whether it's spiritual, is up to you to decide what that difficulty is. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tries everybody in certain ways, but you do have a choice in how you face that difficulty or that affliction. And usually that affliction is really about your own actions. right? And once you realize that you have some control over your actions, or you can reclaim whatever it is that you want to reclaim, then that's the first step. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says many times, that once you take one step closer to him, he will run to you. In that sense, he is the most forgiving of your faults, and he is the one who actually roots for you in any kind of changes that you want to make in your life, inshallah. I will end here. I hope that was beneficial. And once again, I would like to apologize that I'm speaking in English rather than in Malayalam. Inshallah, one of these days I will be brave enough to speak in Malayalam, inshallah. All right, Jazakallah.
Okay, good.